You're back in the loop on Bloomberg TV Philippines. I'm Shawn Yao. The final version of the tax reform bill that the House passed last week should generate roughly 130 billion pesos in the first year. That's according to Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez, who says he's confident he and the senators can sit together and come up with a version they can pass by year end. But the new estimate is a long way off from the first projections made by the House Ways and Means Committee Chair, Dakila Kua. House Bill 5636 will be taken up by the Senate once they resume session in July. Both Moody's and Credit Suisse have already issued reports saying there's a good likelihood that the Philippines will get a credit rating upgrade on this bill, even if it's diluted. And another sector that stands to lose incentives once Package 1 of the tax reform plan kicks in are BPOs. That's right, a major driver of our economy that provides countless jobs and revenues. And joining us today to hash out the finer points of what to really expect, we have Dinbo Macaranas, Research Manager from Colliers. Dinbo, so tell us, we stand to lose our tax incentives, so they're planning to tax 12% VAT to all gross receipts of BPOs. What impact will this be? Is it a deal breaker for foreigners wanting to locate to the Philippines?
Okay. Essentially, Shawn, it's really a question of competitiveness. For the Philippines, the idea is to remain competitive in this market as we see all our different competitors such as India, even the likes of Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh, are emerging in this sector of the BPOs. So at the end of the day, these are really relevant provisions that will impact the BPO sector. If you look at it, 12% on local purchases on equipment that are being brought into the Philippines for them, as well as their purchases for their services and even the goods that they use for their businesses. So that's 12% on top of all the expenses that they have for those particular purchases.
All right, let's talk about PEZA. PEZA, of course, gives all these incentives and tax breaks to all BPOs. In fact, most BPO buildings are PEZA accredited. Exactly. Now, earlier, PEZA Director General Ching Plaza promised that she will try to keep all policies as well as incentives intact, including, of course, a zero VAT rating for all locations. Do you have an update on this since the House passed this bill?
Well, right now, I think, I believe that the PEZA Director General still stands by that. She's still trying to lobby for it, that they will keep that zero-rated VAT. Unfortunately, as you know and as everyone knows, the draft right now has that particular provision. At the end of the day, it's a question of striking a balance between the revenues that the government is trying to generate, as well as protecting the sectors that are driving the economy, such as BPOs.
All right, Dinbo, we all know the BPO sector it really came to prominence as one of our top industries here in the country, one of our growth drivers. It's about 10% of GDP, correct? 23 billion in revenues last year alone, employing some 1.1 million Pinoys.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. We're competitive not just because of the tax perks, but because of our population, our demographic sweet spot, and of course, our English-speaking capabilities. Yes. Will this not be offset or enough to offset the loss of these tax incentives?
Well, you're correct, Shawn. There are basically two legs to that they're trying to consider. Investors are trying to consider when they come over here. First is our labor force, our skill, our English proficiency, as it were. And the other one is cost. But you have to understand that for the labor force growth, or for the labor force aspect of it, IBPAP and the entire industry is also trying to move into the knowledge process outsourcing, or
KPOs.
from the voice contact centers to KPOs. And as we move towards that direction, that advantage of English speaking isn't exactly what we're banking on as we move towards that direction. You look at the likes of India, they're well ahead as far as KPOs. Although we also have to understand that the Philippines is trying to compete in that market. That's why we need all the incentives and the perks to be able to drive this market forward.
All right, so let's move over to your report, right? So you issued this report, and you're talking about, of course, your house's position or Colliers' position on this tax reform package. You mentioned something really interesting. There was a list that came out where 9 cities are included in Tolon's top 100 locations for BPOs.
Yes,
okay,
correct.
so that includes, of course, Manila, Cebu, Davao, Bacolod, Iloilo, and all of that. Now, here we have Clark, Baguio, of course, Dumaguete, and Santa Rosa, Laguna.
Exactly.
Now, what is number 1? Because if Metro Manila is number 2, I'm curious what number 1
Number
is.
1 is Bangalore in India. Out of the 10 top outsourcing destinations, you have 2 in the Philippines, and then 6 others are in India. As I mentioned, they're the ones that we're trying to compete against if we're trying to move to KPOs. Bangalore is your number 1 destination right now.
Okay, so about also your report, it also mentions that some ASEAN countries are very, very competitive vis-a-vis the Philippines. And I'm guessing we stand to lose for, some of our competition to these countries. Kuala Lumpur, of course, 2 cities in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, and of course, Singapore. Can you give us a picture of how close they are to eat, like behind us? Are they breathing down our necks?
No, they're one of the top 30 in Solons. And as you've shown earlier, we're number 2 as far as Manila and number 7 as far as Cebu. They're still far away from us if you really compare us in terms of ranking. But at the end of the day, as we mentioned, we can move down that competitive list if we have if we pull out these incentives. I think that's the major question there, Shawn.
Okay, so Dinbo, I just want to shift you because there's also other concerns apart from it hitting BPOs. There's also this matter of taxing housing rents and leasing. So my question is now, should individuals, example, I have a condo and I'm renting it out, should I be VAT registered? How do I issue receipts and how does that work? Do you have any idea? How have you been advising your clients?
Right now, I think it's still on the early stages, Shawn.
Okay.
But overall, we also see a potential hit in that particular aspect. You see it actually translating to the cost or the sales of your different developers because they would have to have additional VAT on certain sectors of their entire pie that they're trying to sell. Let's say mid-income, high-income luxury. The lower segments would take a hit in that respect, Shawn.
All right. Okay. So they're arguing actually the rationale here of Congress is that they're lowering personal income taxes. So they're saying, for example, before it's 1.9 billion and below.
So
yun
now,
yung VAT exempt. Ngayon, magiging 3 billion and below na because they're assuming like for middle income earners that you'll be making more money kasi your taxes are less. So how will that impact the housing market, you think?
Well,
which is, I think, slowing down a little bit, right?
At the end of the day, I guess it will also have an impact. But you're correct. As more of the money gets into the people's pockets, they could also spend on it for rents. But at the end of the day, I guess the question is the government has to strike a balance between giving tax or having an impact on these taxes against the developers as well as rewarding the the regular Filipino for additional consumption expenses.
All right. Thank you very much, as usual, for weighing in and for coming here to Bloomberg Philippines for your insights. Thank you very much. Dinbo Macaranas from Colliers.